Welcome to another edition of the Jump Seat. We are still here in Phoenix, Arizona. This is day number 3 of the AMC conference, and I am with
Peter Lemme.
Peter Lemme. So welcome to the Jump Seat.
Thank you.
So let's start off with telling everybody a little bit about yourself. So if we get a little bit of your history, which I was reading up on today, it's quite fascinating. You have quite a distinguished career.
Thank you. I started at Boeing in 1981. I worked in automatic flight controls, started in pitch augmentation, went to thrust management. About 7 or 8 years down that road, after the 5767 and 47400 had sort of finished their certifications, I transitioned over to data link and Satcom.
Right.
And happened to pick up kind of the very early stage of those technologies, in particular Satcom. I stayed with Boeing until 1997. Managed to kind of certify the first Inmarsat system for data link, the first for air traffic control voice, the first air traffic control data fan systems. And I left. I went to go work with Iridium for a few years. They went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the end of that path. Was trying to develop an aeronautical terminal for using that Iridium radio. And then I did some consulting, and I ended up with a company called Tenzing, which was trying to bring email to passengers.
Right.
And we ended up getting investment from Airbus, and our competitor was Connection by Boeing. And those were a heady few years until 911,
Right.
which was a big transformation. That's really the beginning of KU band, or big geostationary broadband communication. And after that, I went back into consulting. I've been consulting ever since. I've worked a variety of projects, some on nav radios, but mostly data link and Satcom and in-flight connectivity. And today I'm thought leader for the Seamless Air Alliance, developing standards for in-flight connectivity. I do that on a consulting basis.
That's a pretty hefty career that you've had that you just rattled through in 2 minutes. So let's go back to the start when we're talking about Satcom, because I think that's what you're best known for. Can we talk about the early days and some of the challenges that you went through with such an emerging technology? Like, it's one that I think we take for granted a little bit today, but back then that was cutting edge.
It was.
It still is, but
it's evolving. So we
Right.
keep finding new frontiers to grow through. But there was a push in the 70s to bring Satcom to the airplane. It was actually a VHF repeater network.
Right.
We've got space-based VHF reemerging now,
Right.
55 years later. So it's coming to be. That was the Aerosat program. I wasn't involved in that, but it kind of died on the vine. And Inmarsat sort of came out of that process. And Inmarsat had some satellite resources, and there was interest in using it for aeronautical. And so Boeing, on the 747-400, took commitments from quite a few airlines to deliver an Inmarsat Satcom terminal, and it fell kind of on my shoulders in the end to carry that process through. We had Rockwell Collins was the supplier at those times.
Right.
It was just a low gain antenna. The raw data rate was 300 bits per second. The throughput was 88 bits per second,
Right.
which I marveled on Monday, noting that today we can bring 1 million times more data rate to the airplane than we did back then. It was first certified in 1989, and all it did was ACARS data link. That's the only application we had. It was the funny thing about that was I was working ACARS. And the Satcom group, it wasn't part of my group at the time, because the only thing you could do is ACARS. They needed us to test it. They could turn it on. They could see that it appeared to be logged in, but they couldn't actually communicate.
Wow.
And so my group that was doing ACARS, became very involved in it, and ultimately I ended up taking on both those programs. We moved into high gain antennas and voice applications, and the idea was, hey, we could bring voice to the flight deck as well.
Yeah.
We never really had pondered that. This was a whole new frontier for us, so we had to come up with how the audio interfaces would work, like the audio panel, and how the pilot would tune it, how they would dial. There was a public switch telephone network. A phone basically was what it provided, and telling the pilot if they get a call, how to alert them so that they would answer it. At that time, and still to this day, the HF remains kind of the dominant voice communications technology, and there's a thing called CellCal that they try to send alerts to the flight deck, and so we had ringing. You could actually call the airplane and get it to ring. And then in starting kind of in '91, but culminating in '95, there was a push to bring data link to air traffic control, and that's where the FANS program came in, and
Yep.
I was the DER, the designated engineering representative on behalf of Boeing for the FAA for both the ACARS and the Satcom on the FANS program, and I got to go on all the flight tests and
Oh, wow.
kind of witness that it all worked and be kind of the subject matter expert on site. So, that that all finished up in June of 1995. And to this day, that technology still is around.
So during those early days, what was it like working with the different regulators and different groups to make sure that this technology was safe and that it worked? How was that process?
So we were, initially it was just for ACARS, so it didn't really have a significant operational impact. But still, you want to make sure that you're, providing a reliable service.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting on the voice side when we first started to test voice. We discovered occasionally we would get dropouts, and we didn't even know it. So when you're testing in a lab for SATCOM and you're doing voice, you have to call somebody,
Yeah.
and so you would end up calling your wife, calling a buddy.
Calling a
You have to
friend.
call somebody, and
Right.
after a while, your list of people to call is run out, and you don't even know what to talk about anymore. We'd never noticed a problem, but at some point, as we got down this road of what are we going to say, we would start to pick up a newspaper and just start reading an article. And when we started to read the article, we would start to hear dropouts, and it would like this.
Right.
And you didn't, when you're just having a conversation, your brain sort of fills in those gaps, and you don't really notice it. But when you're reading, you start to really pick it up. And so we started using counts: 1, 2, 3, 6. Oh,
Right.
there's a problem,
There's a problem.
And we would record it, and we reported the issue to Inmarsat. And it was funny. We went to a users forum, sort of like one of these meetings, but just for Inmarsat users. And I was on the floor, and the issue came up on this, and I said, "Hey, we're having a problem with this." And Inmarsat was a little bit, well, let's talk about that offline, because it's a big meeting. We want to do this.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I have a tape of this, and maybe it'd be interesting for everyone to hear kind of what we're experiencing. And well, let's do that offline. But the crowd said, let him play his tape, let him play his tape. And so
Right.
I played the tape, and then there was a lot of silence. And then Inmarsat had to. It turned out it was some settings at each ground station had to be tweaked a little bit to make it work. But yeah, it was. I think the thing that surprised me was there's different forums. There's the ARINC forum that we're here, the AWC. There's RTCA, and then you get into ICAO. And the ARINC environment is really a pretty friendly environment.
Right.
Things kind of move quickly. There's not a lot of things holding you back.
It seems to be very collaborative. Yeah.
Yeah. You get to RTCA, and even worse, ICAO, it's a very charged environment. There's a lot of, I don't know what to say, but not nearly as collegiate,
Right.
and very serious about it, of course. And so I personally didn't really enjoy working in those environments. I chaired an RTCA working group for satellite voice and had some fun with that because it was my own working group. I could
Yeah,
kind
of
of do what
course.
I wanted, but we would meet in plenary sessions, and there would be so much stuff that I didn't care about. So, and ICAO was much worse. And then there was regional working groups also, as we were focused mostly in the South Pacific. So, by and large, I really enjoy this forum, and I've kind of decided this is where I like to be, and so I stayed around this.
Stayed here in this environment more.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the stuff that you're doing now. So that's where you came from, some of the consulting work that you're doing. Let's talk about that.
Sure. So most of my time is spent with the Seamless Air Alliance. It was formed in 2018. and it was really trying to make it easier for passengers to get their devices connected on board aircraft. As I'm sure you've experienced when you get on board, you have to figure out what Wi-Fi network is there.
Yeah.
And then you may not be able to get to the portal. So you've connected to the Wi-Fi, but now what? Nothing seems to be working, and you've got to get to a web page and authorize it. And so the Seamless Air Alliance was promoting technology that allows your device to do that attachment for you directly. It still hasn't really caught on, and it surprises me that that's the case. But nevertheless, the organization has proven to be quite interesting. I'm the thought leader, so I kind of work on all the different groups and help them. And we have a group that looks at personalization, and there's so many things we could be doing, and we've kind of figured it out. We have an airline forum where we get half a dozen airlines to sit around and talk about issues they're having with in-flight connectivity. And then there's a lot of emphasis on quality of experience. We've spent years now really studying how to measure quality of experience. Most people, when they look at a radio link, they say, oh, what's your data rate or what's your latency, as if that's all there is to characterize it. But no network is just a flat line. They always have these peaks and valleys. And so you have to actually use it. And so we've been developing measures for specific applications, things like web browsing and streaming.
Yeah.
And now we're working on messaging, and it's been a really interesting road to figure out how to determine how good a network is really providing internet service. And it's nothing to do with bits per second. It's more about how long does it take for a web page to load, or is your streaming buffering, things like that.
So do you feel that, like I know Starlink entering the market and making internet so much cheaper, do you think that's going to have a huge effect on the industry going forward?
Yeah, I think there's two things going on there. One is I think latency is underappreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've in the past, when people talk about low latency, they talk about gaming applications and maybe voice applications. But in reality, web browsing is really sensitive to latency. And I think these low Earth orbit networks are going to deliver such a better user experience than the geostationary networks have provided, that the market's going to pivot just because of that more than anything else.
Right.
Starlink from SpaceX, there's Eutelsat's OneWeb, the Amazon Kuiper, Telesat Lightspeed, and then there's another system from SES called O3b mPOWER. And they all have kind of different characteristics. Starlink is very disruptive.
Right.
They
much like all of his companies tend to be. Yeah.
He has not embraced standards, and we were all a bit taken aback by the Hawaiian installation having two separate antennas being installed.
Right.
I've been chairing. I guess I didn't mention that. I was the formative chairman back in 2000. Started in 2007, but really got going in 2008, of the KUK band Satcom subcommittee here at AWC.
Right.
And we've developed ARINC 791 and 792, and we're working on 793. And that's been a great collaboration between Airbus and Boeing and airlines and service providers. Not to say that everybody's followed it, but it's provided a lot of guidance, and it has given the OEMs, the Airbus and Boeing, a path forward for offering the services. And Starlink has basically, to this point, they've not embraced any of that, and they're kind of doing
play by their own.
They're just doing it their own way.
Right.
But everybody else in the market, OneWeb is being offered through other service providers. Starlink is direct to the airlines.
Yeah.
OneWeb is indirect. And so those are existing IFC providers, and they're a little bit more on board with what we're trying to do in standards. And I think Starlink's going to come around, because I don't think Boeing and Airbus are going to let Starlink do everything that they are doing right now in retrofit.
Yeah, when you have to deal with two big giants like Boeing and Airbus, they have a lot of sway with how things work and how things go on their aircraft.
It's their rules.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
their sandbox. So you got to play by the rules. Yeah.
One thing I've noticed, it took, I'm from Canada, and it took us forever to get internet on the aircraft, just simply because of how sparsely populated our country is, right? We didn't have the same kind of ground towers that you needed that was kind of covered in the States. So it really took a long time. Do you feel like that those companies are going to be able to offer a better product now that you're not necessarily dealing with a ground-based system as much as you used to be?
Well, I think I call those line of sight, but a
Yeah.
lot of people call them air to ground. Air to ground or ATG was a go-go
Yep.
brand name, so I try not to use it, but the market still uses it. But these are terrestrial networks, cellular networks, effectively pointed up towards the airplane. And there was a licensee for Canada, that kind of squandered it, didn't really deploy it, but there
Right.
was a movement to bring it into Canada, and I don't think it really developed in the way they thought it would originally. But for sure, outside of the very dense urban environments and land masses, satellites kind of the answer. Today, there's a thing called non-terrestrial networking, and we're involved with that at Seamless, where we're trying to. It's built on this direct-to-device idea, where the satellite can talk to your cell phone directly,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and so places like Canada and so forth would really benefit from that
Yeah.
because I live in the state of Washington, and I don't know, maybe 70% of the state's not covered by cellular.
Yeah, it's trees.
Well, it's even big highways. There's
Right.
big. You might have 30, 40 miles where there's no cell coverage on a major highway,
Wow.
and so I'm really looking forward to that. But that NTN technology is kind of a future thing that we may sort of see a resurgence of terrestrial networking, cellular, and non-terrestrial networking through satellite kind of converging on the airplane. So it's all it's all in the mix. It just keeps getting better.
Right. I remember I spent 20 years working with WestJet, and I remember uh, the heavy investment we made to move towards live television, have the physical TV
Hmm.
screens, and that was the cutting edge technology, and we thought that was going to last forever. And then as soon as tablets and cell phones really exploded with media and content, the need for that physical screen went away, and I'm not sure a lot of airlines saw that move coming until it was a little too late, and then they had to pull all those systems off. What do you think is going to be the next disruptive step? I know that's a hard thing to predict, but internet on board really disrupted the live TV, the physical box on board the aircraft. What do you think is going to be the next disruption?
Well, I just want to push back a little bit on your proposition that seatback is on the way out.
Really?
Seatback display, I think it has a place. It can't be turned off for the most part, so it's a great marketing opportunity for airlines.
Right.
For long haul, for short operations, I get it, but for longer operations,
I think that's where I saw it the most is on that narrow body
yeah,
under 3 hours.
yeah,
When you're on those longer flights, it's a little bit different. But
yeah, and you can draw from the same movie catalog. You can deliver it wirelessly or through your seat back, so there's no real differentiation. Really, it's more about delivering. I mean, we've been trying to deliver a good internet service for. I started in this in 1999, but legitimately, it didn't really get going until about 2006 or seven. So we're 15 plus years down the road, and we're still not really delivering the experience people want. And I think we're just on the crux of moving in that direction. And I think the seamless initiatives that I talked about are also
right,
forthcoming, and personalization. We haven't really built on the opportunities of personalizing. It's not just you can personalize content. You can, if I know what movie titles you might like or
right.
things like that, but it gets to advertising and promotions and brand reinforcement, and I think we have just scratched the surface on personalization. So I think you're going to walk on the airplane at some point. Your device is going to connect automatically. The airline and whomever else is going to know who you are. They'll know kind of what your desires are,
Right.
and they'll give you an experience that's much more tailored to your needs.
Right, as opposed to that generic feel that we get now. I think that's going to be a huge game changer too. A couple of podcasts ago, I was talking to a gentleman named Lauren Sugarman who is heavily involved in the tech sector, and he was in the metaverse space for a little bit, and they got to the point where if you saw shoes in the metaverse, you were able to order those and
Right.
have them delivered to your house. So the future is kind of bold here. Do you feel any of the augmented reality, like the Google glasses, the Apple eyewear is going to affect the experience as well? And does the industry have a plan for that?
Well, again, it's been something that they've tried. I was coming to an AWC meeting maybe 10 years ago, and Alaska was doing a demonstration, happened to be on the flight I was on.
Right.
So I had a chance to put on a set of goggles and have that cinema experience. And the things I noticed were it was hot. It was hot. It made me
Right.
sweat. And then there's a little bit of motion issues that you have to kind of address because you're in an airplane and you get a little bit confused in your inner ear versus what you're seeing. So I think those are things that have to be accounted for. But what a way to kind of divorce yourself from this crowded environment and be on a beach and looking at the sea rolling in, or watching a huge movie at high definition. So I think it's interesting. Obviously, the costs are very high right now, and of course people look kind of silly wearing them too. So that's the other side of it. We have to get used to that.
Yeah, we've got to hit that tipping point where there's enough people wearing them that it's not that silly look anymore.
Yeah.
I wonder if we ever get to a point where, you're an airline, let's say you're a vacation destination airline, you put on your augmented reality, whether it be glasses or the full garb, and you're looking at the resort that you're going to, and you're able to purchase or buy excursions or have that really personalized service. So has anybody been thinking that far ahead?
Yes. Well, it's not even that. I mean, we've at Seamless probably 3 years ago. We sat down and we figured out every kind of thing you might want to buy or offer to a passenger, and then we figured out what kind of information you needed to have in order to sort of customize that.
Right.
And it requires a little bit of give and take. And so I think that people have to be willing to sort of play in this game. But if you're traveling to a destination, you already know kind of where you're going to stay. You probably have a car arranged. Your flights are already booked, but you don't know where you're going to go for dinner, and you're not really sure what you're going to do the next morning.
And you have time on your hands to plan it.
Exactly.
Right? Like you're sitting there looking for something to do. This is the perfect time to run that kind of embedded commercial, if you will.
Right. Well, and also, the airline can play a role in this with their partners. And when you go to the hotel, you go to the concierge, or maybe you're out on the street in a street corner and somebody's selling tickets. You don't really know necessarily what you're getting. And I think it's an opportunity for the airline. And by the way, things like if you're traveling with your family, there's different things you might want to be doing than if you're in a business meeting. Like if you're going to be meeting all day, maybe you're looking for a place to take your client out to dinner, and maybe the airline's got a good deal and get you into a restaurant that you could never get into after you land. You could call that restaurant and, I'm sorry, we're fully booked. But in flight, maybe the airline's got, well, we got a few seats, we can get you there. The same thing if you want to go with your family. Maybe you're looking for a zoo or some sort of excursion.
Right.
And again, the airline can kind of give you some confidence that what you're buying is going to have good value, and that if there's something wrong, you've got a big brother to kind of step in and help you out. So.
Right, and that gives people the confidence to purchase. Like I could just see, when you talk about personalization, that's such a fascinating topic because, if you're going to, let's say, Disney World, as a family, or if you're just going to Florida as a businessman, the experience is going to be completely different, right? And it's just such a great opportunity for airlines to increase their margins. I mean, this is an industry that if you're making high single-digit profit margins, that's good. And no other industry would ever accept that as a successful business. So any way we can increase those margins up and up and up is...
I think the average profit it ranges from $8 to $15 a flight per passenger, and so and this is where commissions make a big deal versus the idea of impressions and click-throughs as being a business case. There's not enough money in there to really make a difference. But commissions on sales or bookings or things like that, where you could get $10 or $5 or $20, feedback from that sale, could have a huge impact to the bottom line. We call it ancillary revenue, and I think, again, we've just scratched the surface on that.
And I think of it from a guest point of view or a passenger point of view. This is kind of the way we want to be marketed to, right? Like we want to have something that's relevant to us that we can, you know what I mean? As opposed to the traditional kind of bombard you with, do you want
Yeah.
this? Do you want that? Do you want this? Do you want that? Like
So
having it tailored to you is great.
you were talking about linear programming or live television,
Yeah.
and I'm still a big fan of linear programming. I've watched and observed that the biggest challenge with in-flight entertainment is figuring out what to watch.
Yeah.
It's reading the menu and not eating, so to speak. You're seen that. Well, that movie's crap. I mean,
Yeah.
I would never watch that. And you just go through 100. But if you have a linear feed going, and you tune to it, and we've all seen this. You go into your hotel room and you're just like, whatever, turn the TV on, and now suddenly you're watching some crazy movie you would have never picked out of,
Right.
but it's drawing you in. And I think so. The thing about that is when we did live TV, generally it was the commercials came with the content.
Right.
And what a great opportunity if you could work with those content providers to be able to substitute the commercials, so that when you're watching a title, you're getting a certain set of commercials. Maybe it's about cars, and maybe for me it's going to be about boats or something like that.
Yeah.
But to customize that instead of Clorox bleach or
Yeah.
things like that, who cares? What a wasted opportunity.
Right. And, one of the things I'm really looking forward to returning to airlines at some point is live sports and being able to
Yeah.
not miss that game when you travel.
that's-
And so that's one thing I miss about the live television is
Right.
that you don't get that experience right now. But that has always been traditionally very expensive for airlines to offer. How can we get the cost down on those items in order to kind of offer that immersive experience?
Yeah. Well, obviously, how you monetize it is going to be a factor in that,
Right.
if you can monetize it or not. And you're right, sporting events are the number one draw for live programming. From a Satcom standpoint, when I started, we had wide beam transponders that would cover basically all of the U.S. with one beam.
Right.
And providing live television was easy because everybody was watching the same channels. We've moved to spot beam technology and frequency reuse. And so instead of having one big beam for the whole continent, you might have hundreds or thousands of beams. If you're trying to deliver live television in that framework, you have to repeat that programming in every one of those spot beams. And it steals away a lot of the benefit of frequency reuse. So that's kind of keeping the channel mix down. You can only have a few channels or it gets very expensive.
Yeah.
But we're kind of on the precipice of multi-beam antennas. And as soon as that technology sort of comes to be, and we're there, but it's just not really that pervasive yet. And you'll be able to point a beam over to a wide beam satellite and offload that content from your expensive sort of comm network and bring those channels over. And now you could bring in 100 channels of TV with really no significant incremental cost. And I think that's going to be a big change.
That's going to be a game changer for sure.
Yeah.
And then we're back to the Netflix problem of scrolling, trying to find something.
Yeah, but it's a clicker. So
Yeah, you could
it's
do the old fashioned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I do miss the days of scrolling away instead of just looking at titles and trying to figure out what to.
I have to say I was doing some tests for a service provider that had a live TV product, and so I'm doing flight testing. I'm sitting in a passenger seat and I'm working on my computer to see how the internet service is working. But they have live television running, so I would put my phone in my pocket and put headphones on because I couldn't watch both screens, but I could listen to the TV and see if there's dropouts or whatever while I'm doing this work. And they had kind of a eclectic set of channels, and I'm listening, and it's like suddenly like somebody's putting their hand in a catfish or something. I'm like, what is going on? And I have to pull my phone out and see what's actually going on. So even the crappiest, and I don't mean that bad, but things that you wouldn't expect to draw you can draw you in.
Especially because you're a captive audience, right? You have
Yeah.
nowhere else to go. In the world of social media, I mean, we're a podcast, we're kind of a video blog. You have a blog as well.
I do.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about Satcom Guru.
So I've been in the market for a long time,
Right.
and I feel very strongly about giving back. So I do all my work here at AWC as voluntary. I don't get paid for this. I give my own time to produce these standards and help with it. And then I discovered that there were a lot of issues that just weren't documented as far as how to understand how aeronautical SATCOM works. So I created this blog, satcom.guru. I got the URL, so I'm the guru.
Nice.
And I started publishing, stories about basically technical articles about different aspects of SATCOM, trying to help people sort of appreciate some of the subtleties. I have to say, though, at the end of 2018, with the 737 MAX accident, I used that blog also to document my views on what was going on with the 737.
Right.
So I spent, about 3 years in particular, really writing a lot of articles about the 737 MAX. So the blog has kind of gone, following my interests. It didn't really follow SATCOM per se, and I haven't written as much recently as I have in the past. But I think it's always there for me to draw down.
Excellent. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about, if I understand correctly, you won an award here this week at AMC. So tell me about that.
Yeah, I was very honored to receive the Velare, which is the AWC award category, as a pioneer for data link and SATCOM. And I didn't realize that they've only given the award out about a dozen times.
Wow.
I think I'm the 12th person to get it. I have this. I've been doing that work in data link and SATCOM for about 35 years, and so along the way, I had my accomplishments when I was at Boeing, and some stuff that I did with Iridium, and I've done some stuff with cellular, and now the work that I've been doing with KUK band. So I had a nice sort of a track record to draw from, and it was great to be recognized for that, and I'm quite honored to have received it.
Well, it's well deserved. Before we hop off, I ask everybody this. This is a aviation podcast, and travel is such a big part of it. I know you've seen the world in your travels. Where should I go next? So what's your favorite destination out there?
Wow. I never do good on these types of questions, but I actually kind of like to stay at home. I'm kind of burned out on travel. My wife's about to retire, and she's ready to go travel, and I'm like,
Right.
well, I'm not so much. And I travel. I have a boat up in I take it up in the San Juan Islands. But I was really fortunate when the 747-400 was introduced. I got to spend 2 months in New Zealand. I was helping with the introduction of the 400 with Air New Zealand. And I found that New Zealand was very much a kindred spirit to what I found very appealing in the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
And so it's kind of one of my favorite places to go. And there's a lot to see in both the North Island and the South Island, and I recommend visiting both.
Well, I don't think my wife is going to have a problem with me saying, hey, let's go to New Zealand anytime soon. Peter, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. It's been my honor, and congratulations on the award, and congratulations on such an excellent career. And I really appreciate you spending some time with me today.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
We're going to be back with more great podcasts here on the Jump Seat. Thank you so much, and we'll be back from Phoenix, Arizona.